The locomotive engine is the most beautiful mechanical construction of this or any other time. We watch it under steam from a distance, from meadows where in the sun the cattle graze, and it seems to fly as the swallows fly. Presently we see its colossal form crossing the mighty arches which span the valley of a river. Then we on the platform shrink from it aghast as it rushes past in the full thunder of its power, straining on its course like some mighty monster broken loose. The Great Western Railway linking Bristol to London was authorised by Act of Parliament on 31st August 1835. The line's engineer was the famous Isambard Kingdom Brunel, one of the great figures of the industrial age. Construction began at the London end of the line in 1836, and preparations were quickly underway for the bridge that the railway would need in order to cross the River Thames at Maidenhead, west of London. Bridging the Thames here presented a considerable engineering challenge. There was already a bridge at Maidenhead carrying the Great West Road, also known as the Bath Road, the main highway from London to the west of England. A bridge had first been built there in the 13th century, and the one which stood on the spot in the early 19th century, and which still stands today, was built in the 1770s. The railway would have to cross the river south of the road bridge, at a point where the river was wider, about 100 metres or 300 feet wide. If he had been building the bridge a few years later, Brunel might have used iron or timber, but in the late 1830s his choice was brick, which meant that the bridge would be arched. A bridge of this length and height above the river would normally have needed 3 or 4 arches, but the Thames River Commissioners did not want the river unduly obstructed, so ruled that only 1 bridge pier should be built in the river itself, meaning that the main span would have to be formed from just 2 wide arches. Furthermore, Brunel did not want to raise the railway on the approaches to the bridge, as he wanted to keep gradients on the line to a minimum. So the arches of the bridge would have very little rise, 7.3 metres or 24 feet, as well as being wide in span, 39 metres or 128 feet, making each arch more than 5 times wider than it was tall. Such shallow arches would be, many of Brunel's contemporaries believed, too weak, and would simply collapse. But Brunel had carried out extensive mathematical modelling of the thrusts, loads, and stresses in his proposed bridge, and knew better. He built a pair of graceful semi-elliptical arches, among the flattest brick arches ever constructed, a triumph of engineering expertise and constructional skill. The bridge opened to traffic on 1st July 1839. Originally built for 2 tracks, the bridge was widened to accommodate 4 in the 1890s, while retaining Brunel's structure and its outward appearance. That is the only extensive rebuilding the Maidenhead Bridge has received in over 180 years. It still stands today, carrying the traffic of a busy main line across the Thames, just as Brunel intended. That is not to say there were no problems with the bridge. During construction, wooden centering was used to support the arches, just as can be seen here during the construction of London Bridge in the late 1820s. Centering consisted of complex timber structures which supported the masonry while it was being erected, and during the drying out of materials such as cement and mortar. Brunel's centering for the Maidenhead Bridge was highly sophisticated and very carefully planned out and constructed. As with all centering, it had to be left in place until everything had dried and the structure was sound. Even then, it would not be removed entirely, but eased, which is to say, moved away from direct contact with the bridge structure, so that measurements could be taken and remedial measures applied if any problems appeared. The Maidenhead Bridge centering was removed too early, before everything had dried, and several brick courses in the eastern arch slipped, causing cracking and distortion. The western arch was unaffected. Brunel's critics, and there were many, jumped on this, with the Railway Times declaring that the Maidenhead Bridge of the Great Western Railway must come down. But it was the contractor's fault, not Brunel's. The contractor had shifted the centering without permission, and Brunel was very annoyed about it. The contractor admitted liability and remedied the damage at his own expense. Once those repairs were completed, the centering was eased again and partly taken down. But Brunel instructed that the main timber ribbings be left in place. The remaining centering finally revealed its redundancy when it blew down in a storm at the end of January 1840. A violent storm of wind has lately determined the period of the removal of the centres of the Maidenhead Bridge, which, according to my original directions, were not to have been taken away until after the winter, but which had been left perfectly free. The bridge is in every respect in excellent condition, Brunel reported to the GWR Board in February 1840. This series of events, which critics seized upon to demonstrate the bridge's instability, thus became final proof of its stability, and the bridge became one of the celebrated structures of the railway age. Which brings us to J.M.W. Turner and Rain, Steam and Speed, the Great Western Railway, exhibited at the Royal Academy in 1844 and now in the National Gallery in London. This painting shows a westbound train from London crossing the Thames over the bridge at Maidenhead in a shower of rain. There are various stories about the origins of the painting, and much has been written about whether particular experiences Turner had, perhaps while travelling by train, played a role, and whether anecdotes by others about the picture's inspiration can be taken seriously. I don't think any of that matters very much. No doubt he drew his inspiration from many experiences and many sources, as artists do. The important point is the final result. What was he trying to say? I started this video with a quote from Michael Reynolds, a writer on railways from the 1880s, asserting the beauty of the locomotive, but also its power and danger. That is what Turner's picture is about as well. Reynolds set the locomotive in a pastoral setting, and Turner, too, has painted a pastoral scene. Reynolds then abruptly tears apart that framework of pastoral convention, setting the locomotive in all its industrial modernity and all its overwhelming power hurtling towards us. And Turner does exactly the same thing. The scene is presented to us from an impossible viewpoint. The painter would have had to have been hovering above and outside the northern parapet of the railway bridge to capture this perspective. We are facing eastwards, towards London, and looking down on the river, the bridge, and the train, which is bursting from the dead centre of the canvas and rushing towards us, and will soon pass our imagined viewpoint and hurtle away towards the west. Contemporaries would have recognized the location and this famous bridge. Turner frequently altered the topographical details of the scenes he painted, moving landmarks around and changing their proportions freely to suit his artistic vision. Here at Maidenhead, he has exaggerated the curve in the river, which, as the map shows, is pretty straight at this point, and has thus increased the divergent angle of the two bridges, the road bridge in the background and the rail bridge in the foreground. Turner's manipulation of the scene makes the two bridges seem to sit almost at right angles to each other. This change in angles increases the contrast between the two bridges. The old road bridge, a delicate structure of many arches, faced in light Portland stone that seems to float over the river, and the new railway bridge, dark and dominant, forcefully propelling the world into the future in a diagonal channel of concentrated dynamic movement. The broad-gauge line here was double, not single. Brunel constructed the entire length of the Great Western Railway as double track, but Turner has depicted only one line of rails, further increasing the focused sense of energy. Turner has used angles and recession to create a powerful visual depiction of speed and energy. Not for nothing was he Professor of Perspective at the Royal Academy. The bridge is, in every way, central to this painting. It is sometimes said that the viewer can see very little of it because of the angle at which it is presented, but in fact Turner has ensured that despite his aerial viewpoint, not only the parapets and the trackbed are visible, but those famous arches as well, their curves effortlessly vaulting the mist-haunted river. The two bridges dramatize the interaction, or perhaps conflict, of past and present, which is one of the central themes of the painting. The river curves peacefully beneath the road bridge, between banks fringed by meadows and trees. Upon the river itself is a boat with figures in it, making its way slowly upstream. Turner himself was known to paint scenes along the Thames from a boat, protecting himself from the weather with a parasol, and it can be seen that one of the figures in the boat is indeed using a parasol, and appears to be bent over something upon which he is working, a sketchbook perhaps. So this could be Turner, putting himself in the picture. On the bank are figures in white who appear to be dancing. Are these naiads, classical spirits of the Thames, symbolizing the ancient pastoral landscape through which the train now runs? This evocation of classical antiquity is a typical Turner touch. On the other side of the bridge, hills rise towards distant woods, with a ploughman and his team at work, slowly and steadily ascending the slope, and moving, like the boat in the river, in the opposite direction to the train. The slow current of the river, echoes of the ancient past, rhythms of traditional rural life and the agricultural year are all contrasted with the fierce, inexorable energy and potent modernity of the speeding train. Moving in the same direction as the train, and a little ahead of it, between the rails, as if fleeing its approach, is a hare running at speed. For many years the condition of the painting left this hare almost invisible, but it has re-emerged, thanks to recent restoration. The artist George Dunlop Leslie, who as a 9-year-old boy saw Turner putting finishing touches to Rain, Steam and Speed at the Royal Academy in 1844, claimed in his 1914 memoirs that the artist's reference to speed in the title of the painting was to this hare, not to the train. But this was his own speculation, not something Turner told him. It is more reasonable to say that both train and hare embody speed, and the placing of the hare in front of the train is another instance of the interaction between artificial and natural, old and new, that is one of the central themes of the painting. The train itself is the clearest object in the painting, which is characterized overall by indistinct forms looming through swirling mist and hazy luminescence. Even then, most of the train dissolves into the vague blur of gold and blue at the centre of the canvas. Only the very front of the locomotive, the smoke-box and chimney, are sharply outlined and carry a sense of solidity. Through rain, mist and light, they draw the viewer's eye and increase the sense of energy and forward movement. Behind the chimney looms the dome-shaped top of the firebox. Sparks and cinders fly, and from the chimney 3 puffs of white smoke dissipate into the haze. The open-topped carriages, crowded with people, trailing away into the depths of the picture space behind the locomotive, give the train a reptilian character, as if it is a dragon with a long articulated tail, a resemblance increased by the blurred and magnified light of the locomotive's headlamps, which give a fiery glow to the front that resembles a fire-breathing mouth. This monster train symbolizes the ambiguities of this picture, which simultaneously celebrates the new age that the railway brings and raises questions over the unleashing of the transformative, perhaps destructive, energies which that new age demands, energies which are transforming space, landscape, and the fabric of people's lives in unprecedented ways. Turner's train bursts apart the pastoral conventions of landscape and races into the future, borne on the leaping arches of Brunel's prodigious bridge. Later in the railway age, other painters took Turner's inspiration and transformed it into their own visions of the railway in the landscape. But that, as they say, is a story for another time.